This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today we have a little different show for you. I am at GoBundance recording, and I have two ladies on the show today, Robin Keller and Leslie Hunt. Leslie founded the Hope for the Warriors. Robin is the president and CEO, and actually Leslie is the director of donor partnerships. You're going to hear their story about Hope for the Warriors. I mean, I just love what they're doing, and I love the awareness that they're bringing to helping families of servicemen and women who come back from combat. And through the conversation, you're going to hear us talking about, you're going to even hear me share a little bit about my time overseas, which I don't think I ever shared on the show before, but you're going to hear a little bit of that. But you're going to be more aware also of the need that the families have when servicemen and women come home from Iraq or from Afghanistan or from wherever they've been in combat. We think about those men and women, and we should. Man, I want to personally thank each of them, especially if you're listening and you've served in some way. I just want to thank you personally for that service and that commitment to our country and willingness to sacrifice your time, your life, potentially. I'm grateful for you. But I want you to know about this organization because they are there to help families that are trying to understand how to help this man or woman after they come back from combat. And it is not an easy transition. And most of us just have no idea what these men and women are going through and struggling with. And sometimes for many, many, many years. And unfortunately, oftentimes leads to suicide. And it's a horrible thing. But most of us just have no idea that it's happening in this organization, Hope for the Warriors. They're just doing amazing work and helping these families. You're going to hear some of those stories today. But I just love raising awareness of just amazing groups like this who are doing big things and helping our men and women in arms. So thank you for listening to today's show. And I hope you're encouraged by their story. I hope you will consider supporting them as well.
Recording again from GoBundance, the mastermind. I am honored to be here with so many amazing entrepreneurs that are doing some massive things. They are challenging me in ways that I have not been challenged before, and I love it because my business personally has grown so much by surrounding myself with other people who push me. Today, our guests, Robin, Leslie, they're running an amazing for-purpose organization. And I love this story. I love their mission. But not only that, they've raised $70 million for this cause. And I know many of you listening are trying to raise money. You're talking to investors. You're trying to just present yourself in a way that investors want to be part of what you're doing. And I think these ladies have figured it out. But I want to talk about their calls. I love their calls. I love their mission. I want to hear more about it from them. And we're going to get into some stories too that I know you're going to be touched by. And I personally have been affected by 9/11 and going overseas and spending time in the military and the things that happen there that, man, I wish no one had to experience, right? And so these ladies today are doing some amazing things to help our men and women who have served in ways that most of us cannot imagine. Robin, Leslie, welcome to the show. Honored to have you.
Thank you, Whitney. It's great to be here.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Tell us, Hope for the Warriors, what is that? Give us some background. And Robin, I know you founded this organization, this for-purpose organization, and I want to hear about your desire then, or what spurred that? Like, what sparked that interest to, have this mission? And it's not like you just have this little thing here that, we help one or two people. I mean, $70 million, this is a big deal, and how you're serving here is a big deal. Tell us where it started.
So this started back in 2006, and to align with some of your experiences, which we would really like to hear about, we were incorporated on 9/11/2006, which was really a pivotal moment for me because I was really challenged with deployments and having babies, and is this the best time to start a business? And when that paperwork came back from the state of North Carolina with that date on it, I knew that, there's a higher level of presence that was kind of guiding me to this journey. We started the organization aboard a military installation in North Carolina, military spouses who doing basically what we were meant to do, and that was to take care of each other, and in particular during deployments. And if anyone can remember back to that time, our husbands and wives and families were deploying time after time after time after time. And while we sent them into war very well prepared, we weren't prepared for them to come home injured, and some of those that came home who had given their lives. So it was really kind of scrambling to provide resources and make sure that everyone felt supported. And so Labor of Love, that started a nonprofit or for purpose, as you said, an organization that's now 16 years old, and one that we certainly did not have a business plan for. We didn't have, investors set up at the beginning to make this go. It was do whatever you can to get the money and make sure that we're doing the right things by our families.
What was the thought then of how you could help people or how you could help these men and women that were returning home? And how has that changed over these years?
Well, I would say not a lot has not changed with Hope. We have stayed very true to how we started the organization. That was really based on the family. So we know service members don't go into war alone, and they do not recover alone, but they do commit suicide alone. And so it's very important to stay connected and make sure that their family is intact and healthy. And that way we are impacting those terrible numbers of suicide and addressing head on food insecurity, homelessness, unemployment, divorce, and all the way down to the lowest levels. And military children, the awareness on them and what the lives that they have had is so critical that we are making sure that they're going to be healthy and successful in their life.
Yeah, I love this give back. And Leslie, I know you are the Director of Donor Partnerships. Tell me a little bit about what that is and maybe how that's evolved over, since the time you've been with Hope.
Absolutely. I've been blessed to be with Hope from the beginning, whether it's in a volunteer position, part-time, contractor, full-time. I've run the gamut of positions. So I've been able to see it grow, mature. The leadership has remained consistent, remained the same. Robin and her executive team has always been exceptionally open to new ways to improve and to help our military families and veterans. And again, I've just had the pleasure of seeing that from the inside all these years. Now, currently, like you said, I'm the Director of Donor Partnerships. So my job is to manage all of our corporate partnerships, which is so valuable. And they come to us knowing they want to help, but they're not exactly sure how to help. So it's really our job to guide them to whether they want to volunteer, whether they just want to do a one-time donation, whether they want to become an investor in Hope, because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for long-term investors in Hope, because this need with the military is not going away. It continues to grow, and the need is there. So whether the corporate partners come to us and say, how can we help? We want to have a golf tournament. We want to do a run. We want to have all of our team volunteer. We have a volunteer coordinator that manages all of that stuff for us. But my job is to just kind of help guide them and figure out the best way that works for them and works for us so that our partnership is successful on both sides.
No, that's awesome. Tell us, are there any statistics or anything you could share that would be helpful for the listener to know just the need? Like the men and women that you all are helping, or I know suicide rates are just horrific as far as, these men and women that are returning home. And I would just say personally, it is, I'm so blessed. My wife and I talk about it often that, yes, you see horrible things, when you're in combat, but the Lord has helped me and I've dealt with it so well, so well. I'm so thankful. Not everybody in my squad, made it home, right? And so there's no doubt that affects you, right? It changes the way you look at things, even the morning of that. And I've never shared this, but, I remember eating a burger with this young man in front of our Humvee. This was a massive treat. We never got to eat a burger for months, So, but, it was just an hour later that, he wasn't with us anymore. Wow. And so I can just imagine, his family. And I know other people in our squad or in our unit that, man, it's hard. That is hard, dealing with those things.
Yes, and then you carry that home. And so then your wife or your children or your mom or your dad, your friends, they need help helping you. And
right.
So it's not just, like Robin was mentioning, it's not just the service member, it's the families and the friends, honestly, as well. Ways to transition back into civilian world.
Process that trauma. We're so thankful to have licensed clinical social workers on staff that can talk through these situations with our clients and their families. But yeah, like you said, it's not just you coming home having to deal with this, it's everybody around you. So it's really educating people,
giving them ways to cope and to overcome.
Help to build resiliency.
Resiliency is huge.
Probably don't think about much, or you probably don't think about helping the family know how to cope with it as much as that individual that came home from combat, right? That's where most of the focus is. But maybe speak to that. Like, how do you all help the family cope with this? I mean, it's such a massive change, right? And I'll paint a little picture. I mean, you can imagine somebody that's in combat for a year, and sometimes a lot of these soldiers have gone many times, right? I just can't believe we even do that to our soldiers, honestly. Go back for after year after year after year, but you're carrying around a machine gun. You think about you being hunted practically for a year. You think about what that does to you mentally. That is some hard things, right?
It's hard to sit in that chair and not think what's behind you, right?
Exactly, right? You're going down the road any moment, right? And so tell us how you help those families to cope with that. What are some examples? And then I'd love for us to get into some stories or a couple stories of maybe real life examples of people that you've helped.
So as Leslie mentioned, we do have a fully licensed clinical staff, and that's their jobs. What's great about them and so effective is their military cultural competency. So while many of them are military spouses, so they already understand the culture of the military, all of them go through training prior to the work that they do now to ensure that they understand those nuances that make that trusted connection between them and a service member or a family member, because that's critical for us at the very start that we establish that trust. Prolonged exposure to trauma physiologically changes you. Your brain, emotionally, mentally, and physiologically. And so you have to address that trauma from a lot of different angles. And our first step is really to start processing and normalizing trauma. We liken that to, if you think about, liken this to the pandemic, right? Well, everybody in this country has now experienced some sort of post-traumatic stress, and it's normal. And so that's really important because, one, our service members and their families don't want to feel like there's something wrong with them. They don't want to feel weak. That is not part of their culture. And so they're very difficult sometimes to work with because they don't want to ask for help either. So you got to know those things about the military and their families. And we've got trained professionals who know how to do that kind of work. And they know what questions to ask. And they know if someone comes in with a financial need, that there's probably a lot of other things going on in their life, and we're going to drill down and get to that and help them out on their journey.
It's good to even be reminded of what you just said there, that they're not going to ask for help. They're not going to ask for help, probably more times than not, right? It's almost, Correct. They probably feel shameful, that they're having to deal with this thing. And so give us a couple stories maybe of real examples of families or soldiers that you've helped.
Actually, I'm going to pass this to Leslie because as the head of corporate partnerships, why don't you tell the story about the amazing feat that you just pulled off in Kentucky?
We are truly blessed to have some amazing corporate partners. And a lot of us are familiar with the tornadoes that ripped through Kentucky, which is my home state. So I do have an affinity for that. So what we did is we reached out to a Food Lion, Frito-Lay, also Forward Air, which is a trucking company. We also reached out to the Armed Forces YMCA, Navy Federal, and then Hope for the Warriors. And our goal was to feed 3,600 people. So Frito-Lay and Food Lion donated the funds and the food and the gift cards for all of the families. Forward Air went from Myrtle Beach and transported all of that food down to Kentucky to the Armed Forces YMCA. Navy Federal volunteers created amazing thank you cards for the soldiers down there at Fort Campbell. And within...
I think we turned it around, 7 or 8 days?
It was 7 or 8 days, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was 2 days before Christmas. So the idea was to get down there, feed these families. They, some of them lost homes, or they knew people that lost homes. They're, again, dealing with food insecurity. And it's right at the holidays. So we had staff going down there. We had so many amazing volunteers from Food Lion, Navy Federal, the Armed Forces YMCA. Our staff went down there.
Frito-Lay, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was amazing to see that coming together of all these different organizations that could probably not sit in a boardroom for 5 minutes and get much done. But when it came down to really taking care of these families, there were no no's. It was, how do we make this better? And again, course of 7 days, you turn around and fed a lot of people.
And you know what? Nobody said no. They just said, what do you need? How can we make it happen? And I said, let's just do it.
Yeah.
This is what we need.
We're not sure how this is going to work, but we're going to get there, and we'll figure it out when we get there.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's a great opportunity to talk about how our corporate partners come together and do things.
Yeah.
It takes somebody to put that out there, though, right? And organize that and push something and ask, right? Make the ask.
You just have to ask. If you don't make the ask, then you may not get it. So yeah, and they're always looking for ways to help. Would Forward Air, a trucking company, think that they could help us by transporting these foods? They just threw it on a truck. Didn't cost, so it's wonderful.
What about any family-specific story or individual, anything like that you could share?
Yeah, I think this is a story that I would like to share because it does also speak to the importance of nonprofits in this space still, where people question us all the time. We're not at war anymore. Why are you still necessary? Why should we invest in you? And I say is that many of our families are still at war at home. And this is a story of a service member and his brother who were both in the same platoon. They were scout snipers. And one was hit and he eventually passed from his injuries, combat injuries. And his brother really struggled with that and bounced around and got himself into a lot of trouble. And there was a lot of addiction issues and really just struggling with his mental health. He also had post-traumatic stress. He had a brain injury. And for 10 years, he fought his demons. And he really was starting to come to a much more positive place. He had gotten into school. He was doing well, got accepted to a 4-year college. And his demons got him. And last Christmas, he overdosed. So 10 years later, after his brother passed, we stood with their mother as she received the ashes of her second son. One died from combat injuries and one died from his demons. And I think that's a really important story to tell because there's so many ways we sort of supported the family throughout the 10-year journey, and we are still. And right now we're remodeling the mom's kitchen. And while that may not seem like a lot for her, it is a ray of hope in a place where she has no hope. And if we can just get in with a little bit of hope, we can open up her world again and make sure that she's good to go and that she thrives in her world too. And so I think those are really important stories that need to be heard.
Right. And on another note, we have an amazing family. This gentleman was wounded in Iraq and severely burned and lost vision and all kinds of things. Spent a lot of time down at Brooke Army Medical Center down in San Antonio. Finally getting better and had the opportunity with his wife to ride in a military parade to celebrate the military, which was then hit by a train. And they actually saw several people die during that incident. His wife was thrown from the train and had some serious injuries. So she ended up spending time in the hospital. So he was there for her. They finally get better. She's diagnosed with breast cancer. So one of the things that we were able to do for this family was we've been with them the entire way, but speaking to her on the family side, because of the chemotherapy and all the treatments that she had to do, we were able to help with, and is there a right way to say it?
Yeah, to make sure they were able to have a family.
And they now have a beautiful baby boy.
And he's been promoted a couple times, and he's gonna get out of the military, and he's going to, serve his country in office. And
he's gonna take over the world. He's that kind of guy. They just have the best personalities. Nothing's getting them down, but resiliency. So this is another family that we just enjoyed to see blossom and being able to help this gentleman through his injuries and then through her injuries and chemo and all of these things. So it's a blessing to be able to help these families in that capacity.
It is a blessing. It's interesting, like both of those stories are touching other family members in a big way, right? And I just think it's a mental roadblock. You think of somebody helping veterans. We just think about that homeless veteran or the veteran that's suicidal, right? You don't think about how their family's affected. I know my family affects me every day, right? My wife and my kids. And I can imagine, struggling like that, man, they need to know how to help, right? So, even as you were talking a little bit about it, but I loved how you talked about, like you see donors as investors, right? And I thought you could hammer that home a little bit because I think it's a misconception, right? Where you're just, let's give some money to this nonprofit or whatever. Well, we get the tax benefit. Yes. But, it's not often thought about enough, like the long-term effect of that donation, right? That they're investing in the future. They're investing in this family, like you're talking about, that changes their life forever. And now their children also, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you want to highlight there? I just think it's so important for like donors to even think that way versus, I'll throw $100 here, $1,000 and I'm really thinking more about it.
Right. I think it's a culture of our organization that we believe and treat our donors as investors. So it is ensuring that they know the impact of their money, that they get some kind of return on investment. And that's a personal one. It's a spiritual one. It's probably what helps make them successful in other areas. And it is about the future. So every single dollar counts. I got goosebumps over the holidays as I was opening up envelopes and we were getting $5 checks. And to someone, that's extremely meaningful. And it's extremely meaningful to us that they would take the time to write a $5 check. And that we want to make sure that all $5 goes to programming. And it's an investment people are making. It's their hard-earned money. They worked for it, and they're doing something with it to better the lives of other people. And to me, that's the best investment you can make.
And I think it's the mutual respect. I think that they respect our organization, and that's why they choose to donate and invest with us. We respect our donors so much, like to the point where we just want to call and tell you thank you every day, and without asking you for $1. If we could call I'm not sure they would want us to, but if we could call every day and say thank you, then we would, because we know what it takes. We're military spouses. We know what it's like to fight for every dollar.
I just think it's great because it is often just a misconception. I just love how you all see that. So I want to ask a couple maybe tactical or business questions as well, right? I mean, $70 million, right? That's no small feat. We've raised hundreds of millions at this point, in our business, and it's not easy. It's not easy. And our investors, expect a monetary return, of course, and I can only imagine when you're changing that mindset from a donor to an investor and we're still raising $70 million. I mean, you all, that's quite an accomplishment. Can you speak to that a little bit? Maybe some of the tactics behind how you've got your message out there, how you present yourself in a way that, hey, I want to be a partner of hope. I love what they're doing. How have you all done that?
I think if you listen to stories, stories are really where we make the most impact on people because they're real. And you can hear and feel the passion coming from each and every one of our staff members when we tell our stories. And I keep correcting myself because we're really
for-purpose organization.
For-purpose organization. That's another interview we'll do with you next time on how we're going to change that narrative. But with a for-purpose organization, they're like a for-profit organization. We have a diverse revenue portfolio. And so we have our corporation, we have our foundations, we have our individual giving, we have earned revenue, we have fee for service. And so we have to be very business savvy in order to understand the needs and how that works in each and every one of those segmented audiences. And then we break it down even further. So we have a lot of really talented people on staff who are spending time every day trying to understand, what do you need and want with your investment? What do you need and want with your investment? And really trying to bring it all together. And it's been hard the last couple of years. People were worried about where the money was going. We, had a lot of pandemic did a lot to really change how not for-profits and for-purposes raise and make their own money. And so we did a great job of pivoting. And I say that because I feel like we're a very creative and innovative organization. We saw the mental health needs of the military community years and years and years ago and decided we had to have some kind of impact on that. So we started looking at colleges and universities and how do we encourage students to look down this path of serving military families, because that's where it was going to need to come from. So whether it was mental health or occupational therapy or speech therapy, or even just the idea of philanthropy at that age. So that's where we started working, and we're able to build an internship program through the University of Southern California with their Masters of Social Work students. And while we were able to provide internships for them, we were then able to hire them as soon as they graduated. So we educated them, and then we hired them. And interesting story, most of them ended up being military spouses. So we were also really affecting the military spouse unemployment rates. And that's why, if you look at our staff, 75% of them are veterans or military spouses. And we take a lot of pride in that.
That's awesome. I just think it's such an accomplishment. I appreciate how you all view that, how you promote hope, and how people can partner. And you're very transparent, sounds like, about what they're helping with, what they're doing. So what's next for Hope? What's this year or next year? What do you see 5 years from now?
So right now, one of the great accomplishments and things that we're so very proud of is we are a part of the Cohen Veteran Network. And during the pandemic, we opened up a brick and mortar mental health clinic in Eastern North Carolina. We had to do the work virtually for a while. We've now seen clients in person. But at the same time, we also recognize that our social workers there could operate across state lines. And that's a whole nother interview too, to talk about that and telemental health. But we were able to start seeing clients in Virginia. And so they're serving both North Carolina and Virginia. Our goal is hopefully to open a few more of those clinics in very resource-hungry sections of the country. I also see us going into research. We have a lot of amazing data that would help solve a lot of problems if you take that data and really find solutions to some of these problems that that we deal with every day.
That's incredible. I'm sure you do have lots of data that should be used, right?
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Always being open to new ideas. Robin Kelleher has never said no. I can't think of one time that I've heard her say no. So if you come to her with an idea on how to improve or to make things better, or let's try this, maybe this will work. All right, let's give it a try. And so I think under her leadership and her open-mindedness and our transparency, we just received our 11th year in a row 4-star charity rating through Charity Navigator. I just messed that up. And 90 cents out of every dollar goes back to our programs and services. That's because of what Robin Kelleher's leadership encourages us to do. So transparency, respecting our clients, respecting our donors, respecting our investors, respecting our staff. We're a team. We're a family. Like she said, most of us are veterans or spouses, but whether we are or not, we're still a family and we're there for each other. So the support from the top down, I think, in my personal opinion, would be one of the main reasons for our success. And we're going to keep going. We're going to be a household name. We're going to continue to grow, and I'm personally excited to be on the train.
Well, Robin, Leslie, I've enjoyed just getting to know you all a little bit, but really learning about hope for the warriors, right? And I just think it's an incredible way to give back. And I just love how you all really are educating people. I think it's so important because you just don't know, right? You just don't know that the rest of the family needs help, or that it's 10 years later, they still need help. They never got help, right? They're still struggling with these things, or even 20 years later, or we all see people on the side of the road that hold up, I'm a veteran, and, they look like they're 70, right? It's many years ago that they were a veteran, and they're still struggling. There's still problems, right? And so just love your mission. I love how you're giving back.
And I will tell you that the support of the military communities that came before post 9/11 is amazing. Mm-hmm. What they came back to and how they were treated, they do not want that to happen ever again. So we truly appreciate their experience, their expertise, and their support as well.
I would say we honor and respect those veterans in a way that
there are no words. Yeah, there's no words.
We should have learned something from it. And so we want to make sure that they know that we learned something from the way they were treated when they returned.
How can people learn more about Hope for the Warriors? Where can they find you and consider donating? How can they reach out to learn more about it?
The best place for education about what we do and to get connected with us, to invest, to volunteer, to read great stories is our website. So it's www.hopeforthewarriors.org. And from there, you can also get connected to any of our social media outlets.
And Hope for the Warriors is all spelled out.
Thank you both. A pleasure meeting you. I love your mission. Honored to have you on the show. Hope you have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for telling your story.
Yes, very much.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the number one resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.